Joining us now is Courtney Kube. She's the Pentagon correspondent for us here at NBC News. Courtney, it's great to talk to you. So quite a legacy Donald Rumsfeld leaves behind. Obviously, depending on who you ask, a very controversial figure, but nonetheless one who has led America's military to, at least in the Middle East, in two very controversial and, by some assessments, disastrous wars, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. Bring us up to speed on the very latest.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, definitely no one would question the fact that Donald Rumsfeld is a historic figure in the U.S. So not only was he the youngest Secretary of Defense still in our nation's history, but then he served as the oldest one. His second time here in the building is the one that he will probably be the most remembered for, Eamon. And that is because he was here not only the day that the plane crashed into this building on 9/11, and you may recall that there was video and photos of him helping wounded out of the building. He was helping people who were out on stretchers in the parking lots here, really hands-on that day. And that sort of became the beginning of the everyday briefings where Donald Rumsfeld was the face of the post 9/11 response. And then, of course, the U.S. moving into Afghanistan, going into Afghanistan, the war there. But it was really the invasion of Iraq in March of 2003 that I think a lot of people will remember him for, and his involvement in that. He was one of the architects of the U.S. involvement in Iraq, one of the people who pushed the idea of weapons of mass destruction, that Saddam Hussein had those weapons of mass destruction. Of course, years later, that it became very clear that that was not the case. He had a tumultuous time here in the Pentagon. He, of course, was at the time serving as George W. Bush's Secretary of Defense until late 2006, when he was asked to resign and was replaced by Secretary of Defense Robert Gates, former CIA director. So, I've spoken to, he's been in failing health in recent days, and, we've been hearing about that. Last time I saw him was about 2 years ago, and he had a couple of recent surgeries, and it was clear that his health was failing. But because of that, I've been asking people, who served with him, people in the military, civilians who worked with him, what they really would see as his legacy. And I was surprised. There are a lot of people who even worked with him and served with him here in the Pentagon, who now acknowledge that, going into Iraq, it had such an effect on the U.S. foreign policy, on U.S. national security, on the war in Afghanistan, which we're seeing draw out right now and end right now. And there are a lot of people now who served closely with Rumsfeld at that time who are saying, questioning why they went into Iraq back in 2003, Eamon. So certainly a historic figure, as you mentioned, controversial, definitely to the end. I will say, as someone who covered him here at the Pentagon, the briefings were always interesting. He was someone who loved to really engage in a back and forth with members of the press, and you'd get your heart rate up when you were in a question when you were questioning Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, because you knew that he was going to come back at you, and you better have your facts ready and you better be prepared. So, Donald Rumsfeld passed away at age 88, Eamon.